Murray is present with counsel, Mr. Chernoff, Mr. Flanagan, Mr. Gorgian, and Mr. Pena. The people, by Mr. Walgren and Ms. Brazil, all 12 jurors and the 5 alternates have joined us. To everyone, good afternoon. Good afternoon to the jurors. It is amazing how tofu can be used in any conceivable recipe, ladies and gentlemen. That may be an inside joke with the jurors in terms of culinary experiences, but I hope you enjoyed it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to resume with the proceedings here today, and it's my understanding the people have another exhibit they wish to mark because there is another stipulation entered into by the parties in this case. The verbal stipulation will be contained in a written exhibit, so you don't have to feverishly write down everything. And also there's going to be a very brief amount of further direct examination by the people of Dr. Schaefer. So at this time, let us have the stipulation, and then Dr. Schaefer can be recalled. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just for clarity, this is essentially supplemental to the stipulation from yesterday, People's 221. May this be marked People's 221A, Your Honor?
It is. 221A, since it relates very directly to the exhibit marked yesterday, 221. 221A is?
Thank you, Your Honor. In the stipulation marked People's 221, the term tab handle refers to the plastic portion of the label located on the side of the vial, which can be used as a hanging mechanism.
Is that stipulated by the people?
It is, Your Honor.
By the defense, Mr. Chernoff?
It is.
Thank you. The stipulation is accepted by the court, and as you know, ladies and gentlemen, that means the facts are not disputed. They must be accepted by you. Thank you. At this time, do you wish to inquire of Dr. Schaefer?
Please, Your Honor.
We'll have Dr. Schaefer retake the stand, please. Dr. Schaefer, good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Do you acknowledge, sir, you're still under oath and still sworn to tell the truth?
Yes, I do, sir.
Thank you. Before we resume with further brief examination, if you want, you can pour the water into that cup and place the water container on the side, down below. Thank you. Resumption of direct examination by the prosecution, Mr. Walgren.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
While he's getting set up, Your Honor, I also have a hard copy of the Propofol simulations that were demonstrated through the PowerPoint yesterday. May the hard copy be marked People's 222?
222.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Walgren.
I just have a few brief questions, Dr. Shafer. In regard to your consideration of the evidence in this case, and in particular to your analysis as it relates to any toxicology findings by the coroner's office, did you review what's been marked as People's 168, this 8-page toxicology report summarizing all of the findings by the coroner's toxicologist?
Yes, I have.
And were you able to personally confirm that those findings were, for lack of a better word, showed the results of the pure drug as opposed to any metabolite?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And were the results in People's 168, for example, for the propofol and all the findings, depicting the true level of drugs in the various specimens as opposed to any metabolite?
Yes, I have reviewed the standard operating procedures.
Objection non-responsive.
Yes is the answer,
Yes.
and that remains. Everything thereafter will be stricken. Sustained.
Thank you. And you were able to confirm that through your review of the actual standard operating procedures of the coroner's office for these various tests?
Yes, I'm holding it in my hand, and I've read it carefully, and this is, in fact, an assay of just propofol and an assay of just lorazepam. There is no use of beta-glucuronidase to back convert the metabolite, the glucuronidase, to the original drug. So it is just as represented. It is the drug and does not include the metabolite.
Thank you. Now, in your demonstration yesterday when you set up the infusion set and the Propofol bottle, have you also, prior to doing so, did you have a chance to review People's 29, the slit saline bag, as well as People's 30, the empty 100 milliliter bottle of Propofol?
Yes, I inspected both.
And would People's 29 and 30 be, based on the dimensions and the slit and the bottle, could they be utilized in exactly the same way you demonstrated yesterday, with a spike in the bottle and with People's 30 being actually placed inside People's 29?
Yes.
And in your work on this case, Dr. Schaefer, did you make your spreadsheet software available to the defense so that they could run any simulations they wish to run?
Yes, I did.
And did you also make it known that you were available to assist and run any simulations if they wish to have your assistance?
Yes.
Does that offer still stand?
Absolutely.
Dr. Schaefer, if someone dies with their eyes open, does that have any meaning from a clinical point of view?
No, it means if a person's eyes are open or closed, it doesn't mean anything in terms of the actual passing. I closed my own father's eyes a week ago. It doesn't mean anything if the eyes are open or closed.
Okay, it has nothing to do with the slow death, quick death, anything of that nature?
No meaning whatsoever.
Now, in describing and explaining the infusion setup to us yesterday, and in your review and conducting these various simulations, with that setup in place, were you able to rule out conclusively that Michael Jackson could have been left in the room alone with the infusion line in his leg, and Michael Jackson simply woke up and manipulated something, causing the propofol to flow into him?
No, that's a possibility.
And that would assume then that the infusion line was set up, was in place in Michael's vein, in Michael Jackson's vein, and then he was left alone and essentially abandoned by the doctor, Dr. Murray?
Correct.
Mischaracterization of evidence.
Just
as
a
to
moment. It's
abandon-
argumentative. The objection sustained. The last answer is stricken. Disregard it. Rephrase, if you'd like, Mr. Waldron.
That would assume in that scenario that the infusion line was set up, the propofol was in place, and that Dr. Murray then left Michael Jackson on his own in that state.
Correct.
And you had actually included that as a possible scenario in your April 2011 report, correct?
April 15th, that's correct. It's in that report.
And that is simply because the data explains to you the likely scenario that took place, but as far as what Michael Jackson did in that room, you can't rule it out one way or another.
That's correct.
Now, let's assume that scenario did take place. Would any of your opinions change as to Conrad Murray being directly responsible for Michael Jackson's death?
No, it just, if Michael Jackson had reached up, seen the roller clamp, and opened it himself, this is a foreseeable consequence of setting up an essentially dangerous way of giving drug, and is in no way exculpatory for the fact that Dr. Murray was not present and permitted this to happen while Michael Jackson was under his care. It doesn't change things at all.
And that's one of the reasons why a doctor needs to be constantly on site, constantly vigilant, and constantly monitoring a patient who's put into this sedative state?
Correct. It would still be considered abandonment.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Walgren, thank you. At this time, cross-examination by the defense. Mr. Chernoff?
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Mr. Shafer, good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
I want you to help me a little bit on your discipline of pharmacokinetics, all right? I know this is, I'm going to mark this as VV. I think it's also a people's exhibit. Just
Victor.
This is something that was shown to the jury by Mr. Walgren, and you were explaining what pharmacokinetic is. And what you said was that, is that right? Is this correct, that what this was shown to you to explain?
Yes, it's explaining the link between pharmacokinetics and dynamics.
I don't want to testify for you. I want to make sure we're on the same page here. And you said that pharmacokinetics deals with the movement of drugs through the body. Is that right?
Yes.
And integral to that is time.
Absolutely.
The body takes in drugs in various ways. Is that right?
Yes.
And one of the ways that you've mentioned is IV, and IV's intravenous injection is one way, right?
Yes.
Intravenously, intramuscular, that's a way to get drugs into the body.
Yes.
Oral is another
Yes.
way. Anal,
Yes.
right? Suppositories. Even skin, transdermal,
That's correct.
right? Am I missing anything?
Inhalational,
Inhalation, good.
transmucosal.
And in all of those circumstances, there is dosing involved in getting those things into the body, getting those drugs into the body, right?
Yes.
And not just dosing, not just amounts, but also the number of doses matter, right? Dosaging.
Yes, the number of doses matter.
If I were to take one pill, in your calculations, if I were to take one pill, you would calculate perhaps the concentration of that in the body based on one pill, right?
Correct.
If I were to take one pill and then 5 minutes later take another pill, you would do a different calculation.
Yes.
Okay. And that is pharmacokinetics in determining concentration from dosage.
Correct.
So am I right about all of that?
Yes.
Okay. In this case, and of course you have computer programs that can do that for you, right? You
Yes,
mentioned you actually formed one yourself. You created one.
Yes, I have them here. I can run them if you like.
Okay. No, I believe it. You said you were one of two people in the world that you go to for this kind of information, right?
I believe that misstates my testimony.
Well, is it more than two?
There's a small community.
Small community. All right. The computer programs that you have created and others can help you determine concentration from dosage. Is that right?
Correct.
And if you apply correct dosage information, then you can be pretty certain about concentration at a certain point, based on the computer simulations.
The certainty is related to the certainty in the models, but good models provide an estimate of both the mean and the expected variability around the mean numbers. So good models actually provide the full range of likely responses.
Because people are different.
Correct.
And when you're talking about concentration, the computer takes into account essentially data that has been accumulated through studies. Is that right?
Correct.
And this data are based on human beings that are studied in certain experiments and studies. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And people vary.
Correct.
I may take a lorazepam and pass out, a 2 milligram lorazepam. You may be just fine. People vary.
Not that much.
But that's why you need to take a mean of that. Is that right?
The mean is a typical response, and it's actually called the typical value. And it's intended to be a representative response where ideally half of patients would be above and half would be below. So it's intended to be the typical response. It typically is not the mean because the distribution is not a normal distribution, a technical detail.
Now, I didn't understand hardly anything you said the last 2 days, but I do understand mean. Isn't that average?
Yes, the mean is the average.
All right, now when we talk about median, that's half above and half below.
Median would be a better term.
Okay, so you mean median.
The median would be the more representative term.
Okay. Now, in this case, you were asked to do a little something different, though, weren't you?
I don't understand the question.
Well, you weren't given dosage in all of your simulations and asked to determine concentration. You were given concentration in some of these simulations and asked to determine dosage.
That's correct. There are no records of dose.
Now, your computer models that you... and there are computer programs that will do that, right?
Do what?
If you're given a concentration, just spit out all the possible scenarios of dosages?
Not that I know of.
You mean there's no computer program that will give us every possible dosage scenario for a concentration, a femoral blood concentration?
There would be an infinite number of possible dosage combinations. I don't understand how a computer program would do that.
Well, that's why you explained it.
Is that a question?
Yes. You explained it correctly? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. But you didn't stop there in this case. You also, in front of this jury, described the method of dosing, right?
Please explain what you mean by method.
Well, you stood in front of the jury, and what you did is you took a bottle, Propofol bottle, and you propped it in an IV bag, right?
Yes,
And you said that you had never seen that done before.
that's correct.
And that would be the method by which this so-called infusion, this supposed infusion, would have been provided to Michael Jackson, you said, right?
That's correct.
So that's a method of providing that infusion, right?
That would be a method of
Is
providing.
that pharmacokinetics?
No, that's just anesthesia.
Well, actually, it's investigation, isn't it? Let's go. Let me rephrase the question. You stood in front of this jury. Can I see your box of stuff from yesterday? Do you have that readily available? Has this been marked? You stood in front of the jury with this bag, right?
That's correct.
And you stood in front of the jury with one of these bottles,
That's correct.
right? And you propped up one of these bottles in this bag, right?
Correct.
And you said, that's what I think happened.
That's correct.
Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct.
That's a bold claim, isn't it? Isn't that a bold claim?
It's an honest statement. It's what I think happened.
Well, actually, what you said was you couldn't conceive of even one piece of evidence that would contradict that claim.
I'm not aware of any.
All right, let's talk about that claim. First of all, when you showed the jury, set up for the jury, you used 2 IV lines. Is that right?
That is correct.
Neither one of those IV lines that you used were found at the scene. You know that.
That is correct.
One of them was brought from you, I guess from New York, from Columbia University, you said.
I tried to purchase. Yes, that is correct.
And that particular IV line you attached to a saline bag. Is that right? In
That
your
is
demonstration.
correct.
That IV line, there's no evidence that anybody has ever purchased that IV line except you, in this case, right?
Anybody has ever purchased that IV line except me? I don't, I mean, that IV line has been purchased by thousands of people.
Is there any particular reason why you chose that IV line. Can you hear me okay? I know I'm getting down. Okay. Is there any particular reason why you brought that one IV line to show the jury?
Yes,
Okay.
there is a reason.
All right, so tell us.
I contacted Seacoast Medical a couple days before I came out about buying the other line, and they said that it had to be drop shipped and it would take 2 to 3 weeks. And I didn't have 2 to 3 weeks, so I brought the line that I brought.
This is the line you brought.
Yes. Seacoast Medical was unable to ship me the other line in time for the trial.
Courtesy of Columbia.
Correct.
Got it. But other than courtesy of Columbia, you have no information that Dr. Murray ever purchased that IV.
No, he purchased the Excel part 007774.
Did you have occasion to investigate any other source of supply for that IV line?
For the Excel 007774?
Yes.
I looked at other sites,
Go ahead.
and I did not find other sites that were available, but I'd be delighted to know if you have one here. I'd be delighted to examine it.
Yeah, I got it from Seacoast.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it's possible to get this line.
Oh, yes, it was a drop ship issue. There was a 2 weeks delay. You probably had the same.
In fact, did you know that the prosecution had one?
No.
So is counsel referring to an evidence, I assume?
I don't know.
No, it's not in evidence.
Well, then, motion to strike, counsel's testifying.
Sustained. It assumes facts, not evidence. That last answer is stricken. Disregard.
Can I?
You can follow up. Sure.
I'm going to show you what I marked WW.
Whiskey, WW.
What I'm doing right now, doctors, I'm digging into this box to try to find an Excel IV line so you can compare it. Do I have to do that, or can you identify it?
Well, I do have a picture of it on my laptop. May I look at the picture? Sure, happy to. This has got some blood on it and stuff. Is this what's the source of this?
It's milk.
But what's the brown stuff?
It's not blood.
Okay, that's
Can you
fine.
please?
Be handed something that's sort of discolored.
People see 20 depicts a picture. Be quicker.
Well, no, Mr. Chernoff can use what he wants to use. If Dr. Schaefer wants to look at
Dr. Schaefer, would you prefer to see?
Hello?
people?
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please.
Yeah.
I was saying, if Dr. Schaefer wants to reference a picture, he can, but Mr. Chernoff can go ahead using the exhibit. Now, Mr. Chernoff.
Okay, thank you, Judge. I'm going to approach you real quick. I'm going to take this from you for just a second. I want to show you. Now, this does have stuff in it that you used to get.
That's okay.
Let me show you. Is this been marked? Okay. I have to mark it.
Okay. The exhibit that was utilized yesterday for demonstrative purposes was not marked. You want that marked?
XX, is that right?
X-ray, yes.
What? It's
Tubing.
It's an IV setup, is what it would be called.
IV setup, XX.
May I approach, Chuck?
Yes.
Let me show you. You ready? Let me show you XX. This is the IV setup that you. Is that the IV setup that you used yesterday to show the
Yes, it is.
infusion of?
Wait, please. We have a partial question. Re-ask it, Mr. Chairman.
Is that the IV setup you used yesterday in front of the jury to show the infusion of propofol?
Yes, it is.
What you did. Put this here, is that right? What you did is you set this up in front of the jury, right?
Correct.
And you said, this line is the line I think Dr. Murray used. I got it right. to infuse propofol.
Correct.
And then you also further demonstrate to the jury how it would be impossible for Dr. Murray to have injected the propofol, he said, without a saline wash. Remember that conversation? Remember you injected in front of the jury and it went down the tube and it didn't reach, and you said that shows it's impossible. Remember that?
Objection. I don't know the word impossible was used.
I don't believe.
Well, what did you say?
Wait a minute. The objection sustained. Misstates the evidence. You may re-ask. Go ahead, Mr. Chernoff.
You can, in your own words, just explain what your demonstration was all about.
That tubing that you were just holding was used to infuse the propofol from the Propofol bottle. And we know that the Excel set was not used...
Let me stop you for a second, Shafer. Dr. Schaefer. You're talking about from the Propofol bottle yesterday? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Go ahead then. I'm sorry.
We know that the Excel set was not used because there's no air vent. Without an air vent, the Excel set would not remove the propofol from the bottle. That's how we know the Excel set was not used. May I correct how you stated my testimony earlier?
No, I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. This particular IV line that you showed to the jury, right? I'm looking at...
Yes, the Braun infusion set.
And I'm going to tell you that it is identified as XX.
Okay.
This, and by the way, show us real quick where the venting is on this.
The vent is
If you could step just a little bit back, Mr. Chernoff, so the juror's view is not obscured.
This is the vent right here, and you'll recall that it did not run until I opened the vent so that the air could come in.
So you would agree with me then, or your testimony is that without a vented line, you're not going to be able to infuse from a bottle, right?
Correct.
And this particular line, which is marked as XX,
Yes.
the only reason that you brought it to show the jury, the only possible reason you had evidence that it was used was that you had a Seacoast medical record that a bunch of these were purchased in June. Is that right?
That is wrong.
You had other evidence that line was used, that line was at the scene?
No, you've misstated the evidence.
Okay. Well, did you have other evidence that line was at the scene?
The evidence you stated was not correct.
Okay. Well, was it purchased in July, August, May? Do you have the records?
I have the records, and I'll refer to them exactly.
Dr. Schaefer's doing something on his laptop.
Give me one moment if you may.
Anytime.
I'm looking at the notes, which are in evidence, from Seacoast Medical. And what I see on the notes from Seacoast Medical is that on the 17th of March, there is a note that says, that probably is the 25th of March, basically saying mostly M/S, including safe site 105778, which is that piece, on the 17th of March, which I'll enter as a separate dropship for Dr. Murray. The credit card was then declined on 3/26. And on 4/13, Connie called and says, "Doctor needs supplies but wants to know if we can ship to a California residential address based on the history here. I see this as another red flag," and told her we'd rather not. So this is, as far as I can tell from the notes from Seacoast Medical, the set that I brought is a set that Dr. Murray requested be drop shipped to a California residential address.
Is that what you're relying on? Because I want to make sure that's what you're relying on.
This is the evidence that suggested to me that that set was intended to be used as indicated.
Is that what you're relying on, Dr. Schaefer?
Do you mean, is that all of the evidence?
Yes. Is that all you're relying on?
No. Dr. Murray had ordered these in the past for his Las Vegas address. He had ordered them in 2007, 2008. So it seemed likely that this was a set of tubing that he was familiar with.
It's also tubing that he ordered every few months. His office ordered every few months, too, right?
No, I actually have a summary of the orders, and it was less frequent than that.
But you would agree that he ordered it frequently, that he ordered it many times from the same supplier. I believe the testimony was 4 times. Is that right?
He ordered it on 7/20/07. He ordered it on 10/5/07. He ordered it on 6/24/08 and on 4/24/09, 4 times over 4 years, over 3 years. Over 2007, 2008, and 2009, he ordered it 4 times.
And you understand that Dr. Murray had a cardiology practice, is that right?
Yes, I do.
You don't see it particularly suspicious that any item would be ordered, any IV item would be ordered for a cardiology clinic, would you?
No.
So you're saying that based on the fact that the very last order was in March of 2009, you're putting this IV setup in Michael Jackson's room.
Objection misstates the testimony, Your Honor. He previously testified it's because it's vented. It was an option.
The objection is overruled. I'll allow you to answer and you can explain.
That's why you're putting this in Michael Jackson's room on June 25th, 2009, right?
We need a vented infusion set to explain the rent, to explain the hole in the bottle of propofol that was found. I've inspected the bottle as carefully as I can, and I can find no evidence of a needle hole other than the white spike, other than the hole from the white spike. I'd be happy to look at the evidence again for you. But in the absence of another way of getting air into that bottle, a vented infusion set was used. This is the only vented infusion set I found in the Seacoast orders. There could be others.
What you just said was we needed a vented infusion set for an infusion to be possible, really. Is that what you're saying?
For that bottle. On other days, one doesn't, if there had been a needle hole in the stopper, you can just take a needle and push it through the rubber and use that to get the air in. But the bottle that I examined did not have such a needle hole. So that particular bottle, the propofol was removed with a vented infusion set. He could have used a different one.
Or none at all?
No. How do you get, there's...
No, Doctor, your opinion. You do understand the difference between opinion and fact, don't you? Do you?
I'll sustain the objection.
You understand that everything you said in the last 2 days was your opinion. You do understand that, right? Do you understand that?
I stated my name, which I think is a matter of fact. Much of what I have testified is basically standards of the practice of medicine. It might be the opinion that I have as a physician, but I believe it's that's an interesting question. To say that one should not lie at UCLA Medical Center is my opinion. If you want to stretch the term opinion to that length, then I will agree that my statement that one should not lie at UCLA Medical Center is my opinion.
You were asked to come here, doctor, to state your medical opinion about certain things. Is that right?
That is correct.
And one of the medical opinions you stated was the actual occurrences that happened in Michael Jackson's room on June 25th, 2009.
Objection misstates the testimony.
Overruled. Isn't that right?
Please repeat the question.
One of the things that you were asked your opinion about that you testified to yesterday were the actual occurrences The actual IV setup, infusion, how Michael Jackson received the propofol that was in his body. Isn't that right? Is that not your
The nature
opinion?
of the question is, was I asked to do that? If the nature of the question is, was I asked to do that, I don't recall if Mr. Walgren made a request that I do that or not. I simply did that.
Okay, we're going to get into that. My question is, how would you characterize your testimony? Is it opinion or isn't it?
It is my opinion that that's what's happened. That is correct.
Would you be at all surprised that there are other medical experts that would disagree with you? Would you be surprised?
I would appreciate it if the parties would wait until I have a chance to rule before responding. Sustained. Re-ask, please.
You understand that other parties disagree with you.
As to what?
Sustained.
All right.
I don't know what other parties think.
Sorry.
So that partial answer is stricken. Disregard. Sorry. Thanks.
The IV setup that you brought into Michael Jackson's room in your demonstration then.
Objection. Term brought into Michael Jackson's room.
I brought it to a courtroom.
Overruled with that clarification. Go ahead, please, Mr. Chernoff.
Is there anything else other than what you've testified to today that you base its appearance, its use, on June 25th, 2009? Anything else?
Between my testimony today and my testimony yesterday, I've
Yes,
given
sir.
all the reasons.
All right. And the reasons are Dr. Murray's office purchased this IV.
And requested it be shipped to California.
Are you sure about that?
Well, I can read it again.
Well, you've already read it once. Just want to make sure you're sure.
Yes.
All right.
That's my interpretation of what I'm reading in the notes.
And this is March 17th. Is that right?
No. It was actually the 25th, I think. Let me give it to you exactly. March 17th, it just says, Connie getting ready to place order today or tomorrow. Connie, I believe, works for Dr. Murray. Asked if she could order online, absolutely. But then the safe site is first mentioned on March 25th. Mostly MS, including safe site, which I'll enter as a separate drop ship. And then March 25th again, safe site drop ship, and then March 26th, credit card decline for recent order from warehouse. March 31st, nothing's been resolved, but that seems to involve the safe site.
Okay. And then my question is, other than that notation, the fact that Dr. Murray's office purchased this, is there anything else that you believe shows that this item was at Michael Jackson's house on June 25th?
It's the only vented set that I could find. There may be another one that I missed. But when I look through the orders, it's the only vented set that I could find.
So what you're saying is, since you believe there was an infusion, there needs to be a vented set. Is that right? Is that right?
Objection misstates the testimony. He said because of the rent in the bottle.
The objection is sustained. You're going to have to reformulate the question.
Well,
please.
is your testimony that there needs to be a vented IV set because you believe there was an infusion from a bottle?
No, I found a bottle with a hole in it that was created by a spike, and there was no port in that stopper for the entry of air. It refers to that particular bottle only.
You understand that when the police came to the scene, when coroner investigators came to the scene, they did not find an IV set such as that one.
I'm aware of that.
They found the Excel Horizon IV set.
I'm aware of that.
They also found numerous other items, right?
I'm aware of that.
For instance, People's number 30,
Yes?
People's number 29,
Yes?
all kinds of bottles, right?
Yes.
Syringes,
Yes.
but not that particular IV line. You know that, right?
I'm aware of that.
Would you consider that evidence against the possibility that that IV line was at the house?
No.
You don't consider that evidence?
It's so easy to remove.
Well, it's easy to remove a vial too, right? Is it easy to remove a vial?
It is potentially easy to remove a vial. A vial is a little bit bulky compared to a curled up IV line.
What about a syringe? Is it easy to remove a syringe?
It is easy to remove syringes. Well, again, the problem with syringes is that there's a sharp needle on it.
So, if a particular individual was interested in, I don't know, for instance, hiding his activity, he might be dissuaded by the fact that the needle had the syringe had a needle on it?
Potentially.
During your, and you never did use the Horizon IV setup. We've already established that. Is that correct? During your demonstration.
The Horizon IV set. Which is the Horizon? Is that the Excel set?
Yes.
No, I didn't have one.
During your demonstration, you were trying to show what 25 milligrams, which is 2.5 cc's. Is that right? 25 milligrams of propofol?
That's correct.
You drew up 2.5 cc's into a syringe.
Correct.
And you showed the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how much that was, right?
Correct.
And you used a 20 cc syringe to do that.
That's correct.
You know that your testimony yesterday was that Dr. Murray explained to the police that he used a 10 cc syringe.
Correct.
And that he drew it up with half lidocaine and half propofol.
Correct.
Which would account for 50 milligrams of propofol and 5 cc's of lidocaine.
2.5 cc's of lidocaine.
In one syringe.
2.5 cc's of lidocaine and 2.5 cc's of propofol.
So, Doc, your demonstration with a 20 cc syringe, was that based on evidence you received in this case?
Well, the size of the syringe is irrelevant. I don't understand the point you're making.
Well, maybe to you, Doctor. My question is, did you have any evidence that Dr. Murray had a 20 cc syringe at the scene?
No, there were only 10 cc syringes at the scene. If I thought that was relevant, I would have brought a 10 cc syringe with me.
And your testimony today is that you remember Dr. Murray's statement being that he pulled in 5 cc's of propofol?
No, 2.5 cc's of propofol.
You remember that? Him saying that?
What he actually said was that he gave 25 milligrams, and that would be 2.5 cc's.
Okay. And you recall Dr. Murray saying that he pulled up 2.5 cc's of lidocaine?
He did not say that.
Did he say any amount of lidocaine?
I'm happy to check his testimony. I have it here, but I believe he used the word 1-to-1, which I interpreted as cc to cc.
And so your assumption, if he said 1-to-1, was that it was 2.5 and 2.5, right? Is that right?
That's correct.
In a 10 cc syringe.
Correct.
Pushed into, according to doctor's testimony, the Y connector in the Excel IV site.
Objection. Doctor's testimony, you mean the interview?
The objection sustained. Re-ask it.
During the doctor's statement.
Re-ask the whole question, please.
Dr. Murray said in his statement that he pushed in 25 milligrams of propofol in that formulation into the Y connector on the IV site that was connected to the saline bag, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And yesterday's demonstration in front of the jury, when showing where the medicine would go, you remember showing that?
Yes.
You used a 20 cc syringe and 2.5 milliliters of propofol. Is that right?
Yes.
And you used a different IV set than what doctor said that he used.
Yes, and I did state that I had not checked the actual dimensions because I've been waiting to try. I've been trying to get that from Seacoast. That was actually stated that I had not worked out all the geometry yet.
You said something about 3 feet.
That particular one was about 3 feet. And if the Seacoast is much closer, then that's doesn't change anything. But if it's closer, then it's closer.
Sure.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is it closer?
Yes.
Substantially so.
In the state it's in that he's looking at?
I take it that that's the question. Overruled.
Yeah.
Substantially so?
Substantially so.
Thank you. You further, in your testimony, you further talked about, in describing this bottle, in your, I'm sorry, your demonstration, let's stick with that, okay? You put a Propofol bottle actually you propped a Propofol bottle inside an IV bag that you cut, right?
Correct.
This Propofol, this also was donated, is that right?
No, I purchased that from a local pharmacy.
You purchased it yourself?
Yes.
You paid for it?
Yes. I'm hoping to be reimbursed.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
The Propofol bottle that you used was not the same Propofol bottle, dimension-wise, that was found in Michael Jackson's house. Is that right?
That is correct.
It's thinner.
Correct.
It's taller.
Correct.
You also, prior to putting that Propofol bottle in the IV bag, the cut IV bag, you actually did an initial demonstration by draining some propofol from it by hanging it from its hanging tab. Is that right? Do you remember
That is correct.
So the propofol bottle that you put in that cut IV bag had some propofol out of it already, had some liquid out of it already. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Would you estimate for us how much?
Well, most of what was removed in the process of running the line through. And the volume of the line, I would estimate to be about 6 or 7 cc's.
All right. And that's the bottle that you used in your demonstration. Is that right?
That is correct.
Have you ever had occasion to do the demonstration with this bottle?
No.
This bottle B, please.
People's 30, I'm holding it.
Thank you.
Now, the bag, People's 29, when's the first time you saw this?
I had seen pictures of it, but the first time I saw it was in this courtroom.
And using those pictures, you did your best to estimate the dimensions of the hole in that bag, right?
That is correct.
And this is a bag you purchased from Seacoast Medical Supply?
That's correct.
And as a result of Seacoast is not going to sell you just one bag, you had to buy a bunch of them. Is that right?
I bought 3 bags for $150 because of the need to have them rush shipped to me. I bought them only a few days before I flew out. It didn't occur to me that I should purchase Seacoast supplies, which is why I didn't have the Excel set. And it's why to actually get the actual bag, I only thought of it on Wednesday, and I paid quite a bit of money for them to overnight ship me 3 bags so I could pick it up on Friday before flying out on Saturday.
And then you drained the bag, one of the bags,
Correct.
and cut a hole to try to match the hole that was on People's 29.
Correct.
You did all that yourself?
Correct.
Were you requested to by Mr. Walgren, or was this something you did yourself?
I was very curious to find out what this... I have to admit that the bag piqued my curiosity. I'd never seen anything like it.
Well, in fact, your testimony was that you had never seen anybody do that with an IV bag, right?
Other than knowing that Dr. Murray did it, I have never seen anyone do that.
Dr. Schaefer, how do you know Dr. Murray did it besides what you've interpreted from the evidence?
That one was found at the scene?
All right,
That's my only evidence that one was found at the scene.
That's what I thought. On April 17th, when you did your report, well,
April 15th.
April 15th, you had been contacted earlier than that, is that right?
I believe it was the 31st of March.
By Mr. Walker,
Correct.
who told you that the defense had employed Dr. Paul White.
Correct.
You knew Dr. Paul White.
Of course.
And And he told you that he would like to perhaps use your services. Is that how the conversation went, or you want to be a little more specific than that?
I think that's an accurate characterization. He asked me whether or not I would consider this, and I told him that yes, I would consider it.
And he shipped you a packet of information.
That is correct.
Included in that packet of information were witness statements,
Correct.
including security staff statements.
Correct.
Keepers, house staff statements, right?
Correct.
Paramedics,
Yes. Yes.
UCLA medical records.
Yes.
And one of those statements that he sent you was Alberto Alvarez's statement.
Correct.
And in fact, Mr. Walgren told you that was one of the statements that interested him in this case.
Incorrect.
Did you happen to review in this packet of materials any of the doctor's reports that were made prior to you being engaged?
Let me repeat. I said that was incorrect. Mr. Walgren never called
No,
my
I'm
attention.
asking you a question, Dr.
sorry, sir.
Schaefer. Did you review any of the doctor's reports that were engaged in this case prior to your employment?
Yes, I read the entire package. Oh, prior to my employment. No, I had agreed before I got anything. I told him that I would help him out.
All right. Did you read any of the doctor's statements prior to making your report?
Yes?
All of them?
Yes?
What about Dr. Larson's report?
Oh, Dr. Phil Larson. May I ask Mr. Walgren if that was in the report? I did read it, but I don't recall if it was in the report that was sent to me. May I ask?
No,
Mr.
I don't,
Walgren?
unless counsel wants to go there.
Would you have the ability to read this report without Mr. Walgren sending it to you?
Your question was whether I had read that prior to writing my report, and I don't recall. I definitely read it. I don't recall if I read it prior to my report, and I'd like to ask Mr. Walgren if he sent it to me. If he sent it to me before my report, I can guarantee I read it.
Do you know Dr. Larson?
Oh, yes.
From
yes.
UCLA?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you speak to him about this case?
No.
And you know in Dr. Larson's report that he speculated that perhaps...
Objection, unless he relied on it in forming his opinion, it's inadmissible hearsay.
No, we have to get to that point first in terms of the question. The objection is sustained.
Dr. Larson's report discussed...
Objection, unless he relied on it in forming his opinion.
The objection is sustained.
Well, he's... All right. Your testimony... is you don't
802, 803, 804.
Your testimony is you don't know whether you relied on it in forming your opinion. Is that right?
I did not rely on it in forming my opinion. I can guarantee that.
But you ultimately reached the conclusion in April of 2011. And by the way, you understood that when Mr. Walgren called you, the case was already set for trial. You knew that, right?
Correct.
And you knew that it was set for trial actually in May of 2011.
Correct.
And it was in that opinion that you wrote in April where you said... And you have your report in front of you, obviously, right?
I'll be happy to pull it up.
I don't want to misquote you. I know you're going to need to read
No,
it.
let me grab it.
All right.
If I don't have it there, this is why I have my laptop here. I can always pull it up here. This man was holding it all day yesterday and the day before, but today I don't know that I have it on me.
Whoops, I didn't hear you.
I was holding it the last. Here, I have it now. Yes. Go ahead.
One moment.
Are you ready?
Wait, before I just asked you something or made a comment, you were saying something and I didn't catch it. I don't think Ms. Theodoro did either.
It is my apologies. What I said is that I had the physical report the last 2 days, but it's somewhere in this paperwork. It's easier to find on my laptop.
Thank you.
But you have it now.
I'm looking at it.
All right. Looking at page 14.
Page 14. Yes.
And I'm going to take you down to the third paragraph.
Sure.
You can see that's where I'm heading. You said to understand what might have happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you actually italicized.
Yes.
You actually italicized might
Yes.
right, for emphasis.
Yes.
You said, I have simulated an infusion of 100 milliliters of propofol.
Yes.
And in that same paragraph, you mention an empty vial of propofol was found in the blue bag where it was placed by Alvarez. Is that right?
That is correct.
An empty 100 milliliter vial of propofol was found in the blue bag where it was placed by Alvarez.
Correct. That's what it says.
And you know that it was after the time you wrote this report that Alberto Alvarez was for the first time taken to the property room and identified Peoples 30 as the bottle in Peoples 29.
That actually caused a speculation on part of this witness, Your Honor.
Overall, you do know that.
No, I don't know that.
Is it your statement that Alberto Alvarez, is it your testimony that Alberto Alvarez's statement says, I saw a propofol bottle in a bag?
That was what he said, and I'd be happy to read it from his statement if I don't have a copy with me. But he made a very interesting reference to seeing a blue bottle inside a bag in something milky. I do not believe he used the word propofol, but I'm happy, if you can hand me his statement, I'll be happy to read to you what I based that statement on.
I'll do that for you, Doc.
Thank you.
Let me just get it, okay?
Okay.
You do remember Alberto Alvarez saying there was milky substance in the bag, right?
Yes, a blue bottle and a milky substance is what he said.
Okay.
Blue bag or blue bottle?
I thought he said blue. I'd have to look at the statement. Let's get the actual statement so I can read
What you said
precisely.
in your statement was an empty 100 milliliter vial of propofol in a blue bag. It was found in a blue bag. Is that what you mean to say?
What I meant to do was to reflect what I had read in Mr. Alvarez's statement. And it is possible that my 19-page report submitted 2 weeks after, on April 15th, might have not stated exactly what Alvarez stated, but I'm happy to clarify that for you if that's helpful.
You're human. People make mistakes. It's all right.
It's tax day.
Yeah, absolutely. The bottom line is you made that assessment about the bottle propped up in a bag based on Alberto Alvarez's statement that you read.
That is correct.
Had you ever met Alberto Alvarez?
No.
You ever spoke to him on the phone?
No.
Did you even listen to the statement that he made, the recording that he made with the police? Listen to the recording?
I have not listened to the recording.
How about the transcript? You've seen the transcript, though, right?
I've seen the transcript.
When did you see the transcript?
This is the transcript of this. This is the statement that he made at the time.
Well, I'm talking about the literal transcript of the conversation he had with police detectives on August 31st, 2009. Did you read that transcript?
I'm not certain the witness knows what counsel referred to, the difference between a report or a transcript, or if we could be more precise.
You can let us know if you need some clarification.
I read a report. It was about a 2-page report. I mean, if you have a transcript, I'm happy to look at it.
Let me show you. I'll just clear it up for you, okay? Let me show you. What are we at? YY?
Why?
May I approach? Yes. I apologize, Doctor. There is some my writing on
That's okay. I won't read those parts.
there. You can. But YY is the exhibit that I'm showing you. It's Alberto Alvarez's statement. Is that what you're talking about that you saw?
Yes. This is, let me just take a quick look. But this looks familiar. Yes, this is what I was referring to.
Did you review anything else about Alberto Alvarez? Any police officer notes?
No, this is what I reviewed out at Alberto.
Did you know that you
Is there
made
something else?
Wait a minute.
Let me say that's all that I recall right now. If there was something else in the large packet of things about Mr. Alvarez, I don't recall it right now. I cannot absolutely say that there wasn't. I've reviewed a lot of documents, but that is the one on which I based the statement.
You based your statement, your report, not only on Alberto Alvarez's statement, though, right?
Correct.
You based it on your assumption that Alberto Alvarez was telling the truth.
Yes.
And so, you demonstrate to the jury this bottle propped up in a bag yesterday. You remember doing that?
Yes.
And you said, you've testified that you've never seen anyone do that before, right?
Not propped up in that manner.
And prior to Mr. Walgren popping the hanging tab on the vial, you know that that had never been done to that bottle. That hanging tab had not been pulled out. You know that, right?
We've stipulated to that, Your Honor.
Well, whether he
but
knows it or
assumes
not.
facts, not evidence. So speculation on this witness's part.
Don't, hold on, please. Neither counsel should be making speaking objections. We've been through this before. The objection is overruled. You can frame the question and address it to Dr. Schaefer. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Do you understand the question? You want me to repeat it?
Please repeat.
The Propofol bottle that you used yesterday for your demonstration had a hanging tab on it, right?
That is correct.
And you hung it from the stand for the jury to see.
Correct.
And when you did that, thanks to gravity, you were able to infuse some Propofol from that bottle. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, People's 30, which is the Propofol bottle that was found at the scene, prior to Mr. Walgren popping it up in court yesterday, you know that that tab had not been opened or manipulated at all.
No, I don't know that.
Well, we stipulated to that. Would that surprise you?
I know you stipulated to it, but
No, it's a fact. It's a fact. Then it's a stipulated fact, Doctor. Are you
can't-
about to
you can't tell me
dispute
what I
that?
know.
Are you disputing?
I don't know that.
Well, he's saying you should assume that that's the
That's fine.
correct statement.
I'll take it as given value, but I can't. But he's saying I know it, and may I explain that?
No, you don't have to. Just listen carefully to the question,
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
which is based upon fact.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
So your analysis yesterday, your description yesterday of what you said Dr. Murray did
Yes.
was not to hang the bottle from the IV stand. You didn't testify he did that, right? Right?
The bottle was clearly
Did you,
hung.
Doctor?
To answer.
No,
Well,
no,
it's for yes or no.
It's yes
So
or no.
just a minute. Partial answer stricken. Disregard. We asked,
Did you testify to that or didn't you?
Repeat the question.
you got to repeat the whole question.
All right. In your testimony yesterday, you did not demonstrate or tell the jury that Dr. Murray used a tab on People's 30, right?
I did not speak of it one way or the other. I did not consider it relevant.
You showed them, Dr. Murray, or demonstrated to them Dr. Murray putting a bottle of Propofol into an IV bag and propping it up in there, right?
Yes. I didn't show them him. I showed them me doing that.
And then testify that's what you think happened.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
So under your analysis, Dr. Murray would have taken an IV bag, right?
Yes.
Cut a hole like you did with your IV bag,
For the bag we found.
gone through the mechanism of putting that Propofol bottle in the IV bag,
Yes.
right? Propping it up,
Yes.
and then infusing it that way, to going through all those steps.
Yes.
You find that reasonable to assume?
Yes.
You know, you made a statement yesterday, or days run together, it might have been the day before yesterday, that it is not a good idea for a scientist to make bold predictions or bold grand statements, I believe you said, something like that, referring to that propofol sleep study, without sufficient evidence. Do you remember saying that?
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
And you certainly do consider that what you have claimed occurred in this case is an extraordinary claim.
Not at all.
You understand that Dr. Murray is literally on trial for his life.
Objection. Counsel's testifying.
Sustained. It's argumentative as well. We ask the question, please.
Can I have a second, Judge?
You may.
May we approach on it?
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, as I instructed you at the very beginning of the trial, am instructing you now and will instruct you at the end of the case. The statements or questions of the attorneys are not evidence. They have absolutely no meaning unless there's an answer. It's the answer that's the evidence in this case. So we've been through this, and please understand and accept these renewed admonitions. Thank you. Mr. Chernoff?
You understand this is a criminal trial.
Yes?
It's not malpractice.
Yes.
Overruled.
You said that you don't charge for malpractice cases
Correct.
in the last 10 years.
Correct.
And you have testified in numerous malpractice cases. Is that right?
Incorrect.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell us how many you've testified in?
Just one.
Okay. So in 1 year, in one case, in 10 years, you didn't charge.
Incorrect.
The case that you're referring to was 10 years ago you testified in?
Yes, I've consulted about twice a year since then.
But the case was 10 years ago.
But the actual case in which I testified in court was 10 years ago.
And there was a doctor on the other side named Dr. Katz. Is that
Correct.
right? You didn't like him very much.
Correct.
And you agreed to testify for free in that case.
Correct.
Now, let's go over a little bit, if you'll just bear with me, about on your CV,
Sure.
which is so big it's hard to get through. Where is it? Where's CV? Just a second, Judge. I'm trying to
Please.
find it. That's one thing I'd have. I'm sorry. Do you have an extra copy?
I can let you read it off my laptop if you want. Sure, I can. I can email it to you.
You went to medical school in Stanford, is that right?
That's correct.
It's a very good institution, would you agree?
Yes, I would.
At the time you went, it was in 1978, is that correct?
Through 1983.
And you were you had mentioned that you were never a student of Dr. Paul White. Is that what you testified to?
He was a member of the faculty, and I was a student at Stanford, but that does not make me a student of Dr. White's.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just asking. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Nobody's arguing. There was
Yeah,
a question and then there was an answer.
Yeah. So you went to Stanford Medical School.
Correct.
Dr. Paul White was a professor there.
Incorrect. He was one of about 20 assistant professors in the Department of Anesthesia.
Okay, he was an assistant professor.
Correct.
And anesthesia was something that you became interested in during medical school.
That's correct.
Your testimony was that your first published paper where you were named, and the published paper was in 1988, is that right?
I have to pull my own CV. Give me a moment here. I had papers before that, but they were published at meetings and things like this, and I eventually, because I didn't consider them peer-reviewed, took them off the list. So let me just pull my own CV, if I may. Actually, it'd be easier to do it. Just a second here. Well, I believe my computer's deciding to spend time looking for the internet connection.
You want to show?
In a moment. I believe my first paper is something called Testing Computer Controlled. Here it is, yes. There are several papers in 1988, including a paper of Dr. White's, and a paper with Dr. Jim Scott, and a paper with two papers with Dr. Jim Scott. So there are three papers in 1988, one with Professor White and two with Professor Scott.
Well, the one in 1988 with Professor White, what was your involvement in that paper?
I did the computer programming and also the mathematics for the three-compartment model, which requires a rather more complex mathematics than for a two-compartment model. The actual modeling was done by my first wife, Audrey Shafer.
Now we're going to get back to that paper, but I want to go. We're going to get to that paper. I want to go back to 1978.
Sure.
After medical school, you went for residency. You went to a residency program?
Correct.
At University of Pennsylvania?
That's correct.
And prior to going to that residency program, because of your interest in anesthesia, you and, I'm going to call her Audrey because I don't know her last name. What's her last name?
Audrey Shafer.
Okay. Your first, what was it? Is that your?
That's my first wife, Audrey Shafer.
Audrey Shafer. You and Audrey both had conversations with Dr. White about your residency program.
I'm sure we did.
You had a relationship with Dr. White.
Yes.
And partly because of those conversations, and partly for other reasons, logistics, you went to another very good school, University of Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
Is that right?
That's correct.
And there you studied anesthesia.
I was a medical intern and then an anesthesia resident.
Okay. After University of Pennsylvania, you went back to Stanford.
Correct.
And so did Audrey Shafer.
Correct.
And it was that about 1986?
That's correct,
Is that right?
1986.
All right. And it was during that time that Ms. Audrey Shafer and you were involved in some of the research that was involved in the paper that eventually was published in 1988.
I believe it had started before that. Audrey, in her I took the remedial course through medical school. It took 5 years. I worked with Don Stansky in my last year of medical school. That would be 1983. And Audrey worked with Dr. White during the same year in 1983. We continued that work by correspondence, both of us. Audrey was working with Dr. White, and I was working with Dr. Stansky during internship and residency. And then when we returned in 1986, Audrey continued her work with Dr. White, and I continued my work with Dr. Stansky.
And what was the name of the paper in 1988 that was published as a result of this work?
As the result of Audrey's work?
And your work. I mean, let's be fair.
Audrey's paper was pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of propofol infusions during general anesthesia.
And you were involved in the computer dynamics, I guess, the computer simulations and stuff?
Both the computer programming for that, making a program called Make Model work correctly, and I also, like I said, the mathematics for the 3-compartment model with variable rate infusions, which is what Dr. White had used, was not something that the computer program could handle, so I did the software for that.
All right, and that's in 1988?
Correct.
Which is early days of computing. Early days of computing?
That would be the 1950s.
All right, well, I mean, you actually had an old Osborne computer. Is that right?
I did have an old Osborne computer. Great machine.
Little bitty screen about this big?
Itty-bitty screen.
And for record, I'm about 6 inches.
Is this really relevant to the discussion?
You did.
Go ahead, please.
It was your work was very important because of the computer analysis. Would you agree?
Yes.
All right. In that paper, the data was compiled for what purpose? What was the data compiled for? What was going on with that particular paper? What was the purpose of the project?
I'll have to make an assumption of Dr. White's purpose. I'm happy to do that if you'd like me to.
Do you not know the purpose of that paper?
You're asking, Dr. White was the principal investigator. I'm happy to say why I think he did it.
Well, you read the Propofol sleep study, didn't you? Did you read that study? The
Which
Propofol
study?
sleep study?
What's the propofol? The one out of China that we
Yes.
talked about yesterday? Yes,
Did you
of course
read
I
that? And you know what the purpose of that paper was, right?
I don't really understand your question.
Do you understand what this 1988 study was about?
I believe Dr. White's purpose in the study was to demonstrate the utility of continuous infusion, because Dr. White was a strong advocate of that. And I believe he was intending also to help provide these mathematical models, these models of kinetics and dynamics. But Dr. White didn't have the computing or mathematical background to do that, and for that he turned to Audrey with my assistance. But I believe that was his purpose, was to create the mathematical models. But that is my inference from the nature of the paper.
In 1988, was continuous infusion of propofol not being used?
Dr. White would be better qualified to answer that than I would, but I believe that it was not common. I believe in 1988 propofol was primarily being used for just induction of anesthesia and not for maintenance.
And this was the first paper that proposed that possibility,
I
to your
didn't know
knowledge.
that.
The FDA, do you have the AstraZeneca FDA insert, guys? I'll dig for you. Can you show me which one?
I have a copy.
Oh, okay. May I have it, please?
Yes.
I lied. Sorry, I don't have a copy. I misspoke. It's on my computer, but I thought I was going to do it.
I have a copy, Doctor, but it's really small type. Is that
That's okay.
normal? Is that pretty
Yes,
normal?
that's fine.
Okay. We at ZZ?
Zulu, ZZ.
I'm going to, this is hard to see, but I'm going to put it up on the monitor, just to see if you can identify it for me, please. Okay. I'm going to scan, though.
You're on, turn down the lights on this one.
There's a large text version and marked as an exhibit.
Well, all right, do what you want.
That's fine.
But displaying on the overhead really won't accomplish
Yeah,
much.
I see. Well, let me do it
Mr.
this way.
Zill's handing it to
Is that
Mr.
it?
Chernow? That's exhibit number what?
212.
212?
212.
Thank you.
Let me show you People's Exhibit 212. Is that the graph that you provided to this insert? Or I got the wrong graph.
No, it's fine. I actually brought with me 3 versions of the graph from my own computer from 1992, and I'm happy to give them to you if you like. Here's the initial version.
No,
But
I think the question was, what's being displayed? What
That's
graph?
the graph I spoke of, and I have earlier versions with me if you'd like to see them.
No, this is pretty good.
Yeah, that's
so,
fine.
so this is the graph that you provided for this insert,
That's
right?
for
For this
correct.
AstraZeneca insert.
That's correct.
And throughout this paper, there's all kinds of other things that you provided for this FDA insert, right?
That's correct.
Would you help point me to those areas, please?
I'll be happy to. But I will also tell you that I have a manuscript that was not published that was created in 1992 that I'm happy to give you, called The Pharmacokinetics and Dynamics of Propofol versus Age, Application of the Model to Max Sedation. And this is the manuscript that was written on my laptop here that takes you through it, and I'm happy to give you a copy if you like.
Okay, thank you very much. But what I'll do is I'll show you people's
Yes.
212, okay? And then just if you could just show me, and I'll put it up on the overhead, all right?
What would you like me to do? Mark the numbers here? Circle things that are...
Yes, would you?
All right, so clearly that.
Well, you tell me if there's an objection to it.
That's fine. I just wanted to be clear for the
Right.
record what's happening. That's People's 212.
That's right. Been received in evidence, but counsel agree that Dr. Schaefer can mark, Mr. Walker?
Right. Counsel had him doing it before I realized what document he's writing on, but that's fine.
Mr. Chernoff, okay?
Yes, Judge.
Thank you.
There you go.
And you let me know, Mr. Chernoff, when it's convenient to take the mid-afternoon break. You can finish the line of questioning, though, sir.
All right, so you've circled this graph. This is your graph,
That's
right?
correct.
And it's withstood the test of time, right?
That's correct.
All right. And then you underline some things here for MAC sedation, initiation. These are your numbers, right?
That is correct.
These numbers came from your manuscript that was on the graph, right?
No.
Well, where did the numbers come from?
Those numbers come from an analysis which is described in this manuscript. This revision is dated October 12th, 1992. And this analysis goes through those numbers. The graph that I circled is actually related to intensive care sedation. This right here is max sedation. They're different. They're separated by about 4 years in time. So this was work that was done around 1992. The other graph that you noted, I can actually give you the date. That's okay right now. But it was 4 years later. I also, if you're, sorry.
All right. So let's go further in this insert. Is there anything else in here?
Actually, if you go back, you'll find a section that has a black box around it. And if you'll bring that over here, I'm happy to mark that as well. I believe that it's a summary.
Can we do this? Can we take the mid-afternoon break? That way Dr. Schaefer can mark it, and we'll be ready. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you apparently do need a break, so we're going to give you that mid-afternoon break. Of course, remember all the admonishments. It'll be about 15 minutes or so, give or take. Thank you.